The angry HOA president pinned my epileptic daughter against our gate, blocking her and her service dog from entering our home. She didn't know I was watching. She also didn't know I was Assistant Commissioner of Police. Now she'll learn what happens when you mess with my child. Before watching full story, comment below from where you're watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. The metal gate pushed hard against Ava's back as Mrs. Holloway's finger jabbed at her chest. My daughter's service dog, Beacon, whined nervously, unable to help while the HOA president blocked their way home. I don't care what your father told you. No dogs allowed in common areas. It's written in big letters in the rules that your family thinks don't apply to you. I watched this happen from my car. I had just turned in after a long 14-hour workday. The sight of my 14-year-old daughter, who had epilepsy, being trapped against our gate filled me with anger I hadn't felt in years. Mrs. Holloway had her back to me. Some neighbors had gathered, looking worried but not helping. My daughter's face was wet with tears, her hands shaking as she held Beacon's vest. Please, I heard Ava say with a shaky voice as I walked up quietly. Beacon is a service animal. The Fair Housing Act protects. Don't you dare talk about laws to me. Mrs. Holloway's voice got louder. She pushed her hand against Ava's shoulder, pinning her harder against the gate. I've been a paralegal for 23 years. Your fake dog vest from the internet doesn't beat our rules. I was close when I spoke, my voice calm but dangerous. The tone my officers knew meant trouble was coming. Take your hands off my daughter now. Mrs. Holloway turned around, surprised at first, but quickly looking confident again when she saw me. To her, I was just Thomas Riley, the quiet single dad who worked some government job and rarely came to HOA meetings. Mr. Riley, good timing. I was just telling your daughter that her emotional support animal trick won't. Patricia, I cut her off using her first name on purpose. You have 3 seconds to step away from my child before I arrest you for attacking a minor and breaking the Americans with Disabilities Act. She laughed like she thought I was joking, but sounded unsure. Arrest me? How could you do that? I walked closer and took off my jacket, showing the badge and gun holster I hadn't had time to lock in my car. Assistant Commissioner Riley, Metropolitan Police Department, I just watched you push my disabled daughter and mess with her service animal. Everyone gasped. Mrs. Holloway's face showed many feelings: shock, embarrassment, and finally a desperate try to save face. I didn't know you were a police officer, she stammered. That shouldn't matter, I said coldly. What should matter is that you're breaking federal law by stopping a service animal from being with a person who has a disability. I turned to the watching neighbors. Mrs. Patel, could you please help Ava inside? And Mr. Guzman, since you've been recording this, I'd like a copy of that video for my report. Mrs. Holloway's eyes got big when I mentioned the video. Now wait a minute. No, you wait. I stopped her, stepping closer. For 2 years, I've kept records of every time you bothered my daughter, every mean letter about Beacon. Tonight, you went from harassment to physical assault, and you did it to a child with a medical condition. I pointed toward our house. That internet vest you made fun of? It's registered with the Department of Justice. Beacon had 1,500 hours of training to detect Ava's seizures before they happened. He saved her life 3 times. Mrs. Holloway seemed to lose her fight, suddenly realizing her trouble. Around us, neighbors who had been quiet started speaking up. She's been picking on that poor girl for months, someone said. I raised my hand for quiet. Mrs. Holloway, go home now. You'll be hearing from the HOA board, the police, and my lawyer in that order. She opened her mouth but walked away quickly, her fancy shoes clicking on the pavement. I took a deep breath and faced the neighbors. Thank you to those who tried to help. For those who just watched, do better next time. Inside our home, Ava sat on the couch with Beacon's head in her lap, her hands still shaking. Mrs. Patel had made her tea. She's calmer now, Mrs. Patel said as I came in. I'll go home so you two can talk. After she left, I sat beside my daughter, noticing the red mark on her shoulder where Mrs. Holloway had pushed her. I'm so sorry, Dad, Ava whispered, almost crying again. I was just walking Beacon before dinner like always. You have nothing to be sorry for, I told her. What Mrs. Holloway did was against the law and very mean. Ava petted Beacon's fur thoughtfully. Why does she hate us so much? We never did anything to her. I had asked myself that question many times. Patricia Holloway had made it her job to find problems with us from the day we moved in. The only single dad and disabled child in the fancy neighborhood. Some people fear what makes them uncomfortable, I said carefully. Your epilepsy beacon. These things remind her that life can be unpredictable. That's a stupid reason to be mean, Ava said directly. I laughed despite everything. Yes, it is. The next morning, I made some calls from my home office before going to work. By noon, things were happening. 3 days later, the HOA board called an emergency meeting. The community center was full of neighbors, many wearing purple epilepsy awareness ribbons. Board Chairman Douglas Wilson started with a public apology to Ava, who sat next to me with Beacon at her feet. What happened to Ava Riley and her service dog goes against everything our community should stand for, he said firmly. The board has looked at security videos, witness statements, and the laws. Our decision is unanimous. He paused, looking right at Mrs. Holloway, who sat stiffly in the front row. Patricia Holloway is removed from her job as HOA president, effective immediately. Also, the board will fully cooperate with any legal actions the Riley family decides to take. Sounds of approval went through the room. Mr. Wilson wasn't done. We're also requiring training for all board members about disability loss. And finally, we're creating a new accessibility committee, which we hope Ava might join when she feels ready. The meeting continued with neighbors sharing their own stories about Mrs. Holloway's unfair leadership. Our situation was just the last straw for community frustration. Afterward, neighbors came to us with apologies. Mr. Guzman handed me a flash drive with his security footage showing 6 other times when she confronted Ava. 2 weeks later, Mrs. Holloway faced serious consequences. The district attorney charged her with assault on a minor, violating disability protections, and harassment. With the video evidence and witnesses, she couldn't deny what she had done. The judge was harsh with her. Mrs. Holloway received a $5,000 fine, 200 hours of community service at a disability center, and 1 year of probation. She also had to pay for Ava's therapy sessions. The court ordered her to stay at least 100 feet away from Ava unless Ava allowed her closer. Any violation would result in jail time. The news of her punishment spread through the neighborhood quickly. Most felt justice had been served. The local newspaper even ran a story about it, calling it a landmark case for disability rights. Later that evening, Ava appeared in the kitchen doorway. Dad, I've been thinking about that committee Mr. Wilson talked about, the accessibility one. She nodded. I want to do it, not just for us, but for others who might move here. What if a family with a child in a wheelchair wants to live here someday? I felt so proud. Despite everything, my daughter was thinking of others first. If you're ready for that job, I'll support you all the way. Her face lit up with purpose. I'm ready. 1 month later, I watched Ava walk Beacon along the community path, the same place where Mrs. Holloway had confronted her. Today, Ava was walking with Caroline, a 9-year-old who used arm crutches because of cerebral palsy. They had quickly become friends over their shared experiences. The Accessibility Committee had already made several improvements. The gravel paths had been replaced with smooth pavement. Ramps had been added to the clubhouse. Signs in Braille had been put up. As I watched, Mrs. Holloway's car pulled up beside the path. My body tensed right away. The window rolled down and she leaned out. Excuse me, she called to Ava. Ava stopped, looking defensive but calm. Yes, Mrs. Holloway. I began walking toward them, but stayed far enough away to give Ava space. I owe you an apology, Mrs. Holloway said, her voice missing its usual sharp tone. Not just for that day, but for everything before it. Ava said nothing, waiting. I've been taking those required classes the HOA ordered, Mrs. Holloway continued, and I recently got some hard news, medical news. Something in her face made me stop walking. This wasn't the same woman who had pinned my daughter. The doctor says I have early onset Parkinson's, she said quietly. In a few years, I might need help too. AA's face softened a little. I'm sorry to hear that. Mrs. Holloway nodded, then noticed Caroline. Is this your friend? Yes, this is Caroline. She just moved into the blue house on Maple Court. Surprisingly, Mrs. Holloway smiled at Caroline. Welcome to the neighborhood. You've already met our best resident. Caroline looked confused, but Ava blushed slightly at the compliment. The pads looked much better with the new paving. Mrs. Holloway added, Your committee is doing good work. With that, she drove away. leaving both girls staring after her in surprise. Later, Ava told me about the encounter. Do you think she's really changed, Dad? I thought about this carefully. People can change when life forces them to see things from a new view. Sometimes it takes looking through someone else's eyes to understand their reality, like how she'll need help someday too. Exactly. Though it's sad it took a diagnosis to create empathy. Ava was quiet for a moment. I'm still mad about what she did, but I'm also kind of glad she might understand now. 6 months after the incident, our community held a ribbon cutting for the new accessible playground, the first in our county. Ava gave a short speech about inclusion that brought tears to many eyes. Differences aren't bad things, she concluded with Beacon sitting proudly beside her. They're just different paths to the same place belonging. As people moved toward the food tables, I noticed Mrs. Holloway standing alone watching the children play. Her hands shook slightly as she brushed hair from her face, a sign of her condition. Eva noticed too. After thinking for a moment, she approached her former bully. Would you like to join us for lemonade, Mrs. Holloway? The older woman looked truly surprised. After everything I did, why would you want me there? My daughter adjusted Beacon's service vest, something she often did when gathering her thoughts. Because holding on to anger is tiring, she said simply, and because someday you might need someone to show you kindness when you're having trouble. Consider this practice for both of us. Something changed in Mrs. Holloway's face, a hardness giving way to softness. I'd like that. Thank you. As they walked together toward the drinks table, I stayed back, feeling incredibly proud. My daughter, who had every right to stay angry, was choosing a harder path, the path of compassion. The woman who had once trapped her against our gate was now being guided by her toward healing. Not because she deserved it, but because Ava understood something that my years in police work had sometimes made me forget. Justice without mercy leaves everyone hurt. That day, watching my daughter lead the way, I realized she had become the teacher and I the student. My job had given me power to punish, but Ava's wisdom showed me the power of healing instead. The HOA Karen who had caused us pain was now learning to deal with her own difficult journey, and my amazing daughter was showing her a path through the darkness. Not because she had forgotten the harm done, but because she had chosen to remember her own humanity. Sometimes the greatest strength isn't in winning the fight, but in offering a hand after the battle. And sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't punishment, but transformation of both the person who hurt you and the community that allowed it to happen. As I watched my daughter laughing with neighbors who had once stood silent during her harassment, I knew we had achieved something more valuable than justice. We had created change, not just in rules or accessibility, but in hearts and minds. The next day, I found Ava sitting on our porch with a notebook, sketching ideas for the next community project. Beacon dozed at her feet, his golden fur shining in the sunlight. What are you working on? I asked, sitting beside her. A buddy system, she replied, showing me her notes. For new kids with disabilities who move here, so they always have someone who understands. I smiled, thinking about how far we'd come from that terrible day. That's a wonderful idea. Mrs. Holloway is helping, Ava said casually. She's good at organizing things. I tried to hide my surprise. How does that feel working with her? Ava considered the question strange but also right somehow. Her hands shake more now. Yesterday she couldn't open her water bottle during our meeting. She paused. I opened it for her and nobody made a big deal about it. That's how it should be when someone needs help. In that moment, looking at my wise daughter, I felt a deep sense of peace. The woman who had once made Ava feel ashamed was now experiencing her own vulnerability. And Ava, rather than taking satisfaction in this reversal, was quietly showing her what true community looks like. I'm proud of you, I said simply. Ava smiled. I learned from the best, but we both knew it wasn't true. In this, she had been the teacher all along. While I had wanted justice through punishment, she had found something far more powerful. Justice through transformation. The gate where my daughter had once been pinned now stood decorated with colorful handprints. A community art project. Among them, 2 handprints stood side by side. One belonging to my epileptic daughter and one belonging to the woman who had once caused her pain. Beneath them, a simple phrase that Ava had suggested: different paths, same community.